Dad left me $3 million. I don't need you anymore. Then she smiled. Her lawyer handed me the divorce papers like I was signing for a package. At work. In front of my manager. In front of the intern who'd just asked me for advice. In front of the guy I trained last week. My name is Victor Holt. I'm 42. I install residential security systems, houses, strip malls, pediatric clinics. I'm not rich, I'm not special. But I've always shown up and stayed late. And I just got dumped. Like office trash between client calls. The room went quiet. No one said a word. The lawyer turned and walked out like it was just another delivery. I stood there holding the folder like it had wires sticking out of it. No one moved. My manager eventually gave me a look. Half nod, half pity. I nodded back, walked to the break room, grabbed my thermos and left. Outside it was sunny. Too sunny. The kind of day people describe as perfect, which somehow made everything worse. In the parking lot, Jenna from accounting tried to say something. Her mouth opened, then closed. I kept walking. I sat in the van with the engine running, papers in my lap. I didn't open them yet. I stared at my route sheet like maybe I could skip all this by just going to the next install. So I did. A duplex on Grand. One of those older units with brick siding and cracked steps. I rewired the basement sensors while a dog barked like crazy upstairs. The owner apologized through the floorboards. I told her it was fine. I didn't eat lunch, didn't return calls, just kept working. That's how I got through the last 4 years too. After her stroke, I didn't stop to think. I learned how to turn her, bathe her, change bedding, track meds. We couldn't afford full-time care, so I became it. I skipped overtime. Traded my truck for a used sedan. Swapped my tool belt for adult diapers and meal prep. I didn't complain. Not once. She started walking again after a year. Talking a bit later. And then, she started spending. First it was shoes, then a smartwatch, makeup brands I'd never heard of. I figured it was therapy, retail style. She deserved something good. Then came the Peloton, the spa weekends, the 3-month subscription boxes that showed up unannounced. I asked her if we were okay financially. She said I was too controlling. 2 weeks ago, her father died. I knew she was close to him, so I gave her space. She barely ate. She cried at night. Now I know she was planning. Back home that evening, I found drawers open, closets empty. She took what she wanted. She even left a note next to my vitamins. Don't skip these. Your blood pressure was high last month. I wish I was making that up. I finally opened the folder. The divorce papers were neat, organized, typed with zero hesitation. The signature page had a post-it with her name underlined, like I might forget who she was. Attached was a notice, inheritance confirmed. $3 million. Just like that. Everything clicked. The clothes, the jewelry, the sudden confidence. She didn't just stop needing me, she stopped pretending to. I stayed on the couch for an hour. Didn't cry, didn't scream. Just sat there, while the refrigerator kicked on and off like nothing had changed. Eventually, I opened the utility drawer and found a few receipts, purchases in my name. Cards she used while I was working overtime or fixing the shower. That was when it hit me. She wasn't just walking away. She was leaving the mess behind too. But here's the part she forgot. The debt's not mine to carry anymore. She thought I'd roll over. Thought I'd sign whatever they gave me. Thought I'd disappear with quiet dignity. But I'm still here. Mondays, coming, and I'm not done yet. Before the lawyer left, he muttered something like, "Sorry about the timing." I didn't answer. Just looked at his polished shoes and wondered how many lives he'd walked out of today. Later that night, I stood in the kitchen, staring at a single glass in the drying rack. It was the one she always used, blue-tinted, rim-chipped. I picked it up, wiped it clean again, and put it in the cupboard like it still had a place. The thermostat clicked. The silence after it did was louder than anything. I thought about the night we met. Her joking that I looked like a guy who fixed vending machines. I laughed then. I don't think I'll ever laugh at that again. I didn't call anyone that night, didn't answer texts, didn't tell my sister or my buddy Jake, who I used to work side jobs with. I went to bed late and stared at the ceiling, until morning showed up like a bill collector. I showered, packed lunch like it was any other day, and drove to the office. No one said much. A few looked at me like they'd heard, but no one brought it up. Not even Aaron, who usually couldn't shut up. I appreciated the silence more than I expected. Mid-morning, I had a break between installs. I drove to the bank. The clerk asked for ID and took longer than usual. When she came back, her voice changed. "Did you authorize these purchases?" She turned the screen to me. Furniture, electronics, even some high-end cosmetic kits, all billed to an account under my name. Dated from weeks ago. I didn't flinch, just nodded slowly. "She's my wife," I said. At least she was. The clerk looked uncomfortable but printed the statements when I asked. I folded them into my folder beside the divorce papers. I didn't go back to work right away. I called Sam, a friend of my cousin's. He's not the best lawyer in town, but he's sharp and he owes me a favor from when I installed his security cams during a snowstorm. He listened, then asked just one question. "Do you want revenge or protection?" I said. "I want what's fair." He paused. "Then bring every document you've got, every receipt, every email." I met him that evening. He looked through the statements and whistled low. "She ran this up in your name. If you don't contest it, you'll be liable." I asked what I could do. He leaned back in his chair. "File a counterclaim. Reframe the financial abuse. You supported her during her illness. You assumed joint debt. We build a case that she deliberately misused your credit, and we ask for the liability to be reassigned." He rubbed his chin. "But we need evidence. Dates, charges, proof that you weren't involved." I nodded. "I'll get it." The next 2 nights I pulled old receipts from drawers. I downloaded bank statements, I pieced together a timeline. Gas bills from her spa weekends, call logs showing I was working. It felt surgical. But quiet. That Friday I went to work like usual. During lunch, Aaron approached. "Hey man," he said. "You okay?" I looked at him, then at my sandwich. "Yeah," I said. "Just thinking about rewiring a few things." He blinked. "At work?" "Everywhere." One afternoon, I visited the cemetery. Her father had been buried a week ago. I didn't bring flowers. Just a small brass plate from one of my old install jobs, the kind you screw onto a fuse box when you've rewired the whole system. I placed it beside the headstone. No words, just the act. I owed him that. He trusted me with his daughter. I had done my part, but she hadn't. Back home, I stood in the hallway and looked at the picture frames lining the wall. I took them down, one by one. When I pulled the last one, the nail snapped and the frame fell, glass shattering across the floor. I stared at it for a moment, then picked up the photo. It was from the beach. She was smiling. I was sunburned. I put the photo in a drawer, didn't touch the rest. By the weekend, I found something else. One of the gift receipts had a shipping address that wasn't ours. I looked it up. Her best friend's place. Luxury robes, designer bags, things I never saw her use. She hadn't just spent money, she'd redistributed it, like I was an ATM with no memory. That night I sat alone again. The apartment was still half full of her things. I didn't touch them, not yet. I wasn't ready to pretend she'd never lived there. But I did open my laptop. I opened a document. At the top I wrote, "What she owes," and I started listing. By the time I stopped, it was past midnight. She thinks she took everything, but she forgot what I never gave her, the benefit of the doubt. This time, I'll be the one handing the papers. The first hearing wasn't in some dramatic courtroom with polished wood and sweeping speeches. It was a dull, gray room in a family court annex. Fluorescent lights, coffee-stained carpet. The judge looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. She sat across from me in navy blue. No tears this time, just carefully curated sorrow. Her lawyer was young, confident, and loud. They opened with accusations. Neglect during her recovery. Verbal. Hostility while she was still vulnerable. Emotional coercion through financial control. I didn't react. I didn't even blink. Sam leaned in, whispered, "They're painting you as a villain. Hold the line." I stood up, calm, direct. Then I handed over the file. Timestamps, receipts, prescriptions, proof. Her lawyer tried to object. The judge waved him down. Still, the room had shifted. I could feel it. She'd planted something. Doubt. On the way out, I passed two of her cousins in the hallway. They didn't meet my eyes. I went to work the next morning like always. I installed a security system in a dentist's office. Tested every motion sensor twice. When the receptionist offered coffee, I declined. Then I drove to Sam's office. He had a new envelope on his desk. 3 flagged transactions, all from the month after her full recovery. High-end boutiques, travel agencies, designer electronics, all under my name. None authorized. "She used your cards," Sam said, "but she logged in through her devices." I stared at the printouts. Every item added weight. Every date was another needle. "She's building the image of a martyr," Sam said. "But this is theft." I nodded. Once. That night I sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad, drew a timeline, crossed out dates, circled patterns. Then I wrote one question at the top. What does justice look like for someone like me? The next day I drove to my brother's house. We hadn't talked much lately. He opened the door, took one look at me and said, "She's telling people you left her to rot." I didn't answer at first. Just stepped inside, took off my jacket and sat down. "I made her meals every day," I said. "I cleaned her feeding tubes, changed bedsheets, sat up at night when she cried from muscle spasms." He didn't argue, just said, "I know." That was enough. Back home, I took out the box of wedding photos. There weren't many. She didn't like having her picture taken. I stared at one from the early days, her in a yellow sundress, sitting in the back of my pickup, laughing at nothing. I turned it over, didn't throw it out, just set it face down on the desk. In the closet, her shoes were still neatly lined up, 4 pairs, all flats, bought during recovery. I moved them to a cardboard box, sealed it, wrote "donate" in black marker. No rage, no revenge fantasy, just decisions. Later that week, Sam handed me a draft motion, request to separate financial responsibility retroactively from the date of her full recovery. He looked me in the eye. "You sure?" I nodded. "She doesn't get to leave with my debts." He slid the papers across the table. "She's going to hit back." I didn't flinch. That night, I stood in the hallway. The place was quiet. No more oxygen machines, no more timers, no more therapy alarms. I took down the last photo on the wall, our wedding day, the one framed in gold, her idea. I flipped it to the back and leaned it against the drywall, let it gather dust. Then I sat in the dark and wrote one more note for Sam. I want her to feel what I felt, not with anger, with absence. I folded the paper, placed it in the envelope beside the legal motion. This wasn't over, but I wasn't chasing her anymore. She didn't even flinch when the judge ruled the debt dispute was admissible. Instead, her lawyer smiled and pulled out a sealed envelope. "Your Honor, we're submitting a countersuit on the grounds of emotional neglect and medical mistreatment during the plaintiff's recovery." The room didn't gasp, it just shifted. Sam looked at me. I didn't need to say anything. He knew. She was playing the last card she had, and it was a dirty one. I sat there, hands flat on the table, as she told the court I left her alone for days, fed her expired food, and forced her to clean herself before she was ready. That I yelled, that I threw things, that I weaponized silence. She wept as she spoke. The same woman I carried to every appointment. The same woman I shaved with my own hands, brushed her teeth, learned to speak her gestures before the words came back. That woman was now performing a monologue for a crowd who didn't know me, but I'd done too much work for that to be the final act. Sam called 3 witnesses, our old neighbor, a home care nurse, and her own neurologist who confirmed the timeline of her recovery and my role in it. She wouldn't be walking without him, he said. The judge nodded but didn't look up. I watched her lower her head. As the neurologist stepped down, Sam waited. Then, without even clearing his throat, he dropped a new folder on the bench. We're requesting permission to submit evidence of repeated financial misconduct by the defendant using the plaintiff's personal accounts. Another shift in the room. Inside were receipts, furniture, handbags, streaming services, meal plans, hotel charges, spanning 2 years, all in my name. None approved. Sam continued. He didn't notice at first. He assumed they were household expenses. But these were exclusively for her. Purchased during work hours, signed with his name, including an attempted withdrawal of $28,000 3 days before she filed for divorce. The judge raised an eyebrow. And she never informed him of the inheritance? Correct. The judge gestured for the clerk. Motion granted. Continue. Discovery. That night I didn't sleep. Not out of anxiety, but clarity. 4 years of my life were rewritten in that courtroom, but I wasn't finished. Sam handed me a draft, something official but not legal. A statement, clear, concise, and quietly brutal. The next morning I published it. I didn't name her, didn't mention the trial, just laid out the dates, the numbers, and the debt. The caption, silence isn't weakness, sometimes it's proof. No hashtags, no comments, just the truth. That Sunday, I met with someone I hadn't seen since college, an old ethics professor turned civil attorney. He didn't offer sympathy, just questions. Why haven't you walked away? Because truth matters. He nodded. Then write it down. All of it. Not for them. For the court. For you. I went home and wrote 10 pages. Sam trimmed it to 2. The judge read it in full. Later that week, I drove past the hospital where we first met. She worked nights then, running labs and prepping charts. We used to eat in the car on her breaks, cheap tacos, midnight air, her head on my shoulder. Now, those memories feel like postcards from a country that no longer exists. The final day of testimony felt like weather breaking after a long storm. No thunder, just wind dying down. The court clerk passed the ruling in silence. Sam leaned over. She's not coming back from this. I didn't nod. I just stood, buttoned my jacket, and walked out past her family, past the same woman who mouthed shame weeks before. She looked away this time. Outside, the clouds were splitting. That night, when the motion passed and the debt officially shifted to her name, I didn't toast. I didn't call anyone. I took out the trash, closed the garage, and left the porch, light on, small rituals, but they were mine again. She waited outside the courthouse, alone this time, no lawyer, no mother holding her purse, just a camel coat, sunglasses, and that little head tilt she used to give when she wanted something. Victor, she said, as if she hadn't accused me of abuse 2 weeks ago, as if 4 years of my life weren't sitting in the court archives, signed, documented, preserved like some autopsy report. I thought maybe we could talk. No lawyers, just us. I looked at the parking meter next to her. It had expired. She stepped forward. You didn't have to do all this. All what? She hesitated. You knew I wasn't ready, that I was scared. I made mistakes, but you handed me divorce papers at work. She closed her mouth. I gave you everything. My time, my money, my dignity. And when you got what you wanted, you left. Now the debt has your name on it, and suddenly I'm worth talking to again? Her voice broke. I was hurt. No, you were cruel. She reached into her bag. If we sell the second property, I don't want anything from you. You're legally entitled. I said no. She blinked fast, like it might reset the moment, like it might take her back to a version of me who used to carry her up the stairs. I just want to know why, she said. I looked at her, really looked. You remember that night after your dad's funeral? You cried in the kitchen because no one brought pie. I made one at midnight, from scratch. She nodded slowly. I gave you everything I had, but that wasn't what you wanted. You didn't want a husband. You wanted a sponsor. She opened her mouth, then closed it. And now that it's gone, I said, you want to negotiate. I stepped around her. I could take everything. But I'm not the one who builds on lies. She didn't follow me. Later that week, her lawyer called Sam. Tried to push a new settlement, something that would split the remaining assets and silence any public claims. Sam declined. The ruling stood. All debts moved to her name. The joint account fraud was now officially a civil offense. And the defamation case? Pending. I didn't press charges, but I let the paper trail speak. A month passed. I didn't check her social media, but I didn't have to. A friend from the old neighborhood texted me. She's selling furniture on Facebook Marketplace, and it's the fancy stuff. Another sent a photo. Her new car, parked with a boot on the front wheel. 2 unpaid tickets, minimum. I never smiled at those updates. Just read them, then deleted. One night, I got a call from the clinic near downtown, where I'd installed a full security suite 2 years back. The manager wanted to upgrade the network and use my name as the contractor. When I came in, a nurse met me at the desk. You're Victor Holt? Yeah, she paused. I just wanted to say, thank you. My mom's disabled. I read about your case. What you did for your wife. Not many would have stayed. I didn't know what to say. I nodded. Quietly. I left the building with no fanfare. No pride, just stillness. That weekend, the city's Disability Advocates Guild hosted a small ceremony. I hadn't planned on attending, but they'd put my name on the list. Someone handed me a pin. Another person, a kid in a wheelchair, asked for a photo. That night, they called me a quiet hero. I didn't feel like one, but I showed up. Back, home, I sorted my receipts one last time. The documents, the transcripts, the evidence. I put it all in a fireproof box and slid it under my bed. There was nothing left to prove. My story wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about letting the truth stand when someone tries to rewrite it. 2 months after the court ruling, I started teaching a workshop at the local community center. Basic home safety, wheelchair-friendly installations, quiet stuff most people don't think about until they need it. I kept it small, just me, a few handouts and a fold-out table with cheap coffee. But people came. Every week, a few more faces. A father and son showed up one Saturday. The boy used a cane. The father said, "Saw your name in the news. Figured you'd be the one to trust." I nodded, said nothing. Just got to work. One evening after the last class, I found a letter taped to my windshield. It wasn't from her. It was from her brother, the one who never liked me, who once called me overly average. It said, "You were the better one." She doesn't know how to live without someone holding the weight for her. I didn't keep the letter. I didn't need it. Weeks passed. I got offered a consulting job, out of state. Good money, quiet town, clean slate. I thought about saying no. Kansas City had been home for 20 years. But then I remembered that home had been her too. Her voice, her shape in my bed, her perfume in the hallway. And now it wasn't. So I packed. The night before I left, I dropped by the old neighborhood for a final walk. The streetlight outside our former house flickered the way it always had. Her car was gone. The lawn was overgrown. There was a for sale sign with a faded phone number. I didn't knock. Didn't linger. Just walked. At the corner, an elderly woman in a motorized chair rolled past me. I helped her get over the curb. She smiled. Thank you. That was enough. A month later, a regional paper ran a feature on advocates for independent living. My name was in the last paragraph. Victor Holt, a technician who became a caregiver, declined interviews but continues to support accessibility programs quietly. I got a copy in the mail, unsigned. Sam swore it wasn't him. Didn't matter. 1. Morning in my new town, I got an invitation. the county's annual ceremony for civic service. They wanted to recognize me. I wore my cleanest shirt and sat in the back. When they called my name, I walked up, shook hands, and said thank you. No speech, no story, just stillness. A photographer asked for a photo. I said sure. Later that night, they sent me a copy. I looked tired, but not broken. Not anymore. I saved the photo, framed it, put it beside a small card that read, "Gratitude isn't what you say. It's who you are when no one's looking." I never got a thank you from her. Never needed one. The gentleman's revenge isn't loud, but it's always personal. If this felt personal, make it personal. Subscribe now, and don't miss tomorrow's story.